Hey, hope you guys have had a good weekend so far. I've had a pretty good weekend so far. Aside from the last stream, which technically was on Thursday, so I guess it doesn't really count. That's good. I'm happy to not count it. Um, but I'm happy to be here and doing this because this is a fun activity that I like setting up for myself. um, yeah. I don't think anyone was here for the previous stream, but it was dumb, unfortunately. Oop. Let me get this up. I have two stories. One is longer than the other, significantly. I think one is like 7,000 words, the other is like 10,000 words. But we have two. Depending on how long we go, I don't have to end early. Well, okay, let me be realistic. I probably will end the stream actually after we finish the stories, but I might stream tomorrow because I didn't get to leave the marathon stream up for a variety of reasons. There's a really obvious one that you might know if you were here for that. It's tragic. It was a tragedy, unfortunate circumstance. But it's fine. Everything's fine. I can't tell if this is audible. It's loud for me, but I don't think you guys can hear it really at all. Turn on my volume a little bit. Yeah, it's way quieter than that, so you probably can't hear it at all. That might be better. I think that should be fine, relative to how loud I am. Alright, let's get this on the road. The first story is Agency. We haven't done a horror story in a while, and I really wanted to. I scouted this one out several weeks ago, but it wasn't like not a good fit or not a good fit. It just wasn't. I don't know. I didn't want to read it. It was long. But it's interesting. It's an interesting story. Not too gory or anything. It's more of like a psychological, I would say Lovecraftian, more abstract monster in the background kind of story. But it's good. The other one is Earth Hour, which I just picked out today. And that's definitely more along with sci-fi and more along with like cyberpunk sci-fi, which we haven't done a lot of on here. A lot of it's been like spacefaring sci-fi. I don't know what genre that would necessarily qualify as, but this is more like a cyberpunk kind of story. And it's pretty interesting. Well written. Nice. Fun. I don't know. Anyway. Agency. Written by George Sandison. Illustrated by Jamie Keenan. Edited by Ellen Datlow. An estate agent is forced to choose between a sale and his humanity when facing the inhuman eldritch forces that feed off rental tenants across the United Kingdom. Let's go. Expand this a little bit so we can get a little bit more text on the screen. I think I'm gonna put on a sweater. I don't know why it's so cold at the end of May. Like, April was warmer than May. What the hell? It was crazy. I'll be right back. Alright, actually, instead of getting the blanket, I just put on a little, well, a big, oversized cotton shirt. Will hold the heat in and insulate well. But yeah, I don't know what. It's kind of upsetting because I took the blanket out of my duvet cover. In the summer, I just sleep under the duvet cover itself without the blanket. And I packed it up and put it away, and the next day it was like 50 degrees outside. And it's been more or less like bouncing around the low 60s ever since. Very upsetting. Very annoying. Let's say that. Alright. Ahem. I may take breaks for water. I think I'm gonna take explicit breaks for water, because otherwise I'll just be pausing and you won't be able to hear what's going on, and you're like, what's going on? I think that's better for the experience. I will be doing that. And I have a snack as well. I'll take a break between the stories. I think that's overall a good thing for me to do. Better thing for me to do than just powering through them. And I hope you guys have a great day. Enjoy. Mr. 3 arrives 15 minutes before his appointment, then rings the doorbell repeatedly. 3 p.m. is a straightforward instruction, with no ambiguity. Yet still, the piercing sound ruins my concentration. Perhaps he's hoping the extra quarter hour will help him discover the secret code. Maybe he's hoping he can win me over, as if I've got anything to do with it at all. As if I'm anything other than a worm wriggling on the hook. Oops. Why would you do that? He leans on the doorbell again, an old-fashioned one, just a shrill bell echoing up and down the corridor, vibrating the nails of my headache. I squint down at my phone, trying to remember the correct sequence of buttons, the glyphs that will let me pay off my credit card with the last of my salary. Has to be today, or the interest payments mean baked beans next month. I'm taking slices off my debt pile, clinging onto solvency, just about. But a sale lives or dies on appearances. You win by manifesting the person you want to be, that they want you to be. So I have to bottle it all up for the clients. Mr. 3 wants me to be 15 minutes early. Mr. 3 wants things on his time. Mr. 3 wants an absolute kicking if he doesn't stop ringing that bell. The landlord calls me into the bathroom and shows me the state I'm in. I wet my hair down, shoot my cuffs, and straighten my tie in the cabinet mirror, making the best of myself I can as I peer around the distortions in the glass. It's a cheap suit, and it never sits right, but it's all I've got. This was my first permanent job straight out of uni, and the only one offering it a guy with a mediocre degree a hefty salary. I know everyone hates estate agents, but I never had a dream. Just my student debt. There's that second shadow on the wall behind me again, as if the mirror is giving out its own light. No time for that. I open the front door to find Mr. 3 leaning on the garden wall, flicking at his phone in the drizzle. Nice and early, I see. Do you want to come in? Oop, I'm not connected. It's connected now, no worries. Nice and early, I see. Do you want to come in? He looks straight past me into the flat, mumbling as he shakes the rain off his waterproof. He's lean, well-groomed, dressed in unremarkable office wear. A pastel cotton shirt, black trousers, black leather brogues. A man permeated with the quotidian. He should be Rafe's client, but Rafe has fobbed him off on me. Single, 40-something, buying past sale-by-date pork pies for dinner. I see a man of restraint, routines, structure, and regular savings in moderation. Fastidious, immeasurably predictable, hardly what the landlord is looking for. I show him anyway. The property is the downstairs flat of a Victorian terrace conversion. A long corridor reluctantly reveals a bedroom in the original dining room, complete with a jug of wilting daffodils in the original reception room, and a kitchen where it has always been, although the bathroom extension into the garden is new. Fully furnished, integrated dishwasher and washer-dryer, access to the dingy garden, shared with the landlord, who occupies the upstairs property. Recently repainted, with a particularly muddy red-brown accent wall in the bedroom, it will be several weeks before the mold becomes visible again, by which point the spores will have permeated the new tenant's skin completely. They will carry the fungus out into the world, leaving traces of it across drains, their place of work, their friends' houses. They will hold it close under their duvet at night and coat their guests with every loving hug. But Mr. 3 is more concerned about break clauses than rising damp. He comments on the very competitive rent for the area. He can imagine his finances all the way to next year, while the ichor of blood sacrifices across centuries runs through the bricks and mortar he covets. He thinks wealth matters, that it will keep him safe. His kind are two a penny. When I explain that all aspiring tenants must provide a written statement, take a breathalyzer test, and provide a drop of blood, he merely raises an eyebrow and says, "Is that all? The last place wanted my financial records going back 3 years. I have to be more subtle, normally, but there's no risk here. I know the landlord won't accept him. This meager man." I steal his breath, prick his thumb. He's writing down his true names when the boiler releases a powerful crack. I've wasted enough of the landlord's time. I usher Mr. 3 out with the constant babbling of my trade. The next viewing arriving, stacked up all day, terribly sorry, such a popular property, call the office if you want to make an offer. A gust of wind from upstairs slams the door shut behind him, and the pipes growl and creak around me. It's got worse lately. Its hunger has been growing. Once, deep into a 2-day bender I couldn't afford with the guys from my agency, an early mistake. To think I could buy my way in, Misha whispered to me, "The more people there are on the planet, the harder they have to fight." He blanched once he realized he'd said the words out loud, that he'd broken one of the covenants of his class. That was the night they brought me in a fit of MDMA brotherhood. In their drug-addled way, I think they meant it as a sign of respect, that in another life I could have been one of them. The come-down was harsh, but it paled against Rafe's gray face in the office the Monday after, when he realized what he'd done. Things never change. Even though there are more have-nots than ever before, power like Misha's lies in the illusion. They all live in terror of the landlords, and they all wish they could become one. The game is bringing fresh meat to the table. Anyone can bind tenants. It takes a finer touch to procure a feast. The landlord keeps me busy after Mr. 3, just because it can. By the time I've ushered the prospect out the door and back to whatever gray iteration he calls a life, beetles and flies litter the property, and a thick layer of grease is spreading up the kitchen splashback. Owning everything doesn't stop them from being petty. I spend half an hour scrubbing the kitchen clean again, trying not to imagine what kind of fat it is. It's stubborn, a bloody red-brown color, and the air tastes salty as I work. I sweep up all the insect carcasses and dust down surfaces I cleaned this morning. I'm sweeping the hallway clean, almost finished, when he comes. It's a tight feeling in my chest, like always. A dank stink of panic before he enters me in that thick rush like I am a glove being ripped by ragged claws. A sharp tug down my spine, and the fit is snug. The weight of a heavy blanket so warm in my bed at night. I am an emperor begging for scraps. This is all you can offer? Do you dare to starve me? To draw my hunger out until I am forced to consume you simply to secure your silence? Legions have crumbled under my gaze. The blood of continents has poured off my back like rain. This world was born from the darkness of my home. You are my subjects. You are tools at my disposal. You are the salt and wart-tang of marrow in my throat. Your history is my banquet. You know what I need. I must feed. Nourishment. To regain my strength and cut your plane asunder and open the door to home. Now, share my hunger. Feel what waits behind the curtain, beneath all you know, under the glimmering disorder of your world. There. Can you feel it? You know what I need. I peel my eyes open, my head throbbing. Things slowly come into focus, and I see a bright red streak on the corner of the radiator. Probing gently, I feel a sharp hit of pain above my hairline, my fingertips coming away red. I lift myself from the floor, wadding tissues to the wound to stem the bleeding. I watch the blood run back up the metalwork of the radiator as it is sucked into the bleed valve, every last drop. I panic when I see more on the skirting board. Just 10 minutes until the next viewing. I wipe it clean as best I can with more tissues, my stomach twisting as if a snake is coiling inside it. I'm so hungry. As the Spice called. He says he's interested in the flat, but has a couple more viewings. Fucking tease, eh? It's Misha's turn in the office today, so he's running the phones. It's Saturday. Game time, in our world, but Misha's ahead on targets as always. He's hungry, same as all of us, but gluttons can be lazy too. Everything is on the line for me today, though. Last weekend before the salary run, I'm off my monthly and quarterly targets. No targets, no OTE bonus, no OTE, and I'm back to siphoning fuel out of Rafe's Audi to keep my car running. No company cars with mileage for me. You have to earn that. Saturday is the day. Today. Also today, IRL, taking a water break. All the young professional couples are in 1,000 knife fights for viewing slots. Everyone is ready to overpay for the prime locations, the recent refurbs, the fully furnished local amenities, and 24-hour transport links. Just one weekend to get it done before they're back to burning the next week on the pyre. I asked Misha, "You mean Mr. 3, right? It's easier to avoid real names." Misha is right about that, at least. Hold on. I hear pages being turned, and then he says, 3 p.m. Tuesday. He called him indigestible. The landlord wasn't a fan then. You could say that. I barely slept last night, with my throbbing skull and the whipping ruination of my guts. The cut on my head doesn't show to clients, at least. It's not the first time the landlord has taken its anger out on me. I've tried everything from my stomach across the last year. Eating, not eating, probiotics, a high-fiber diet, carb loading, spirulina shakes, keto and paleo diets, the 5-2, milk of magnesia. But I still feel like mouths are birthing inside my bones one tooth at a time, feeding on my marrow like it's egg yolk. Tell me you've got something good set up. Yeah, I do. Rafe handed one over last night. They're in a rush, and he's booked up with the Anscombe-Branks couple. Said he's already sampled, and they're plump for it. Rafe is another public school boy, impervious to his averageness. His clients get names. They have futures. Misha has run with him since they were kids. They're both from families that have served the landlords for generations. This whole fucked up social scene of intermarriages, secret handshakes, and disclosing which landlord they're under before they make out. Kids born into it. Fucking travesty of a childhood, if you ask me. Turning out these stunted little men who thrive on their inadequacies. It's my sole consolation since taking this job, because I can never leave it now. At least people like Misha and Rafe finally make sense. Send them over. Don't screw me on this one, Misha. I need this sale. The landlord's already talking about asking the agency for a volunteer. Keep your merkin on, twinkle twat. Misha laughs, but it's hollow. We all know the stories, and we all believe them. Don't be a Barnaby, they say. They batted about the office, braying like donkeys as they talk about old school friends and the depraved shit they did. Rafe was the one who told me what it meant. Eventually. Oh, fuck, Francis. This is just the funniest fucking thing you've ever heard. So, Tobias was the most extreme bender in the school. He'd stick his dick in literally anything. Once over the Easter holidays, his parents were on safari, and Mummy had taken Father to Antigua for their anniversary. He broke into the school's wine cellar and got absolutely rascaled on vintage Amontillado, totally blottoed. And he fucked a loaf of bread right in the bread bin, and left it there. Pre-buttered toast. He's such a fucking delinquent. Gross. The morning after that, hanging out of a dog's arse, Tobias got a telegram from his mama. Uncle Barnaby had to volunteer. Total calamity for the family, obviously. Barnaby was doing super well until Black Monday when he got wiped out. From star agent to impoverished cretin overnight, selling off his stock holdings and properties in secret until there was nothing left. He started turning up to work in suits from Marks and Spencer, if you can believe it. And you know, there's no coming back from that. Poor old Barnaby was given a choice, in the end, and he bloody well stumped up. Took out life insurance, then volunteered himself to the landlord. Tobias said his family ended up buying a house in Reading with the insurance. Poor bastards. Poor Barnaby, if you ask me. Misha says, all yours. They're booked for this afternoon. Misha sends over the written statements from Mr. and Mrs. 430 in advance. So I read them in the car, where I've parked several streets away. It's over if they see me climbing out of my rusty, dented old Nova. They need to believe I'm one of them. He's oversold it. He always does. But there is something there. Mr. enjoys a career in finance, with the investment branch of a leading multinational bank, where he is training to serve high net worth clients. He was Cox for the college first boat, and played first 15 for the what does that mean? Is that sports? Football? And played first 15 for Richmond's under 21s. In his spare time, he plays jazz saxophone. Only at reasonable hours. Haha. That's all in the past. Now he spends 15 hours a day in one of the glass and chrome prisons on Bishopgate. Entry-level smell to him. Fresh out of the packet. They mentioned the rowing at the beginning, while they still remember what it felt like to watch the sunrise over frosty meadows from the river. Still, his first job will out-earn everyone I knew at Oxford Brookes. 1.5 miles and generations of wealth separate us. It's all about the pursuit of wealth for him. His path to success, a coded labyrinth of status. It's nothing as crass as money. He'll earn a fortune and never be free to spend any of it. Mrs. gained her MPhil in the radical political roots of 16th century Japanese ceramics at Goldsmiths, where she worked with such artists as Beth Lowe and Jonathan Yamakami. Her own work focuses on reimagining kintsugi traditions in the post-colonial Anthropocene spaces of 21st century London, using materials such as reclaimed plastic and Victorian glass she finds as part of her amateur mudlarking team. She's a social media manager working for a major high street biscuit brand. She's the catalyst, of course. Mr. drank the Kool-Aid, but Mrs. spent too long nurturing her essences to ignore them. All the hope and imagination will fester. She'll start nesting and going out with new friends Mr. has never met, forgetting about kintsugi but taking up pottery. perfecting glazed marigolds on handmade teacups. Anything to fill the time as Mr. works longer and longer hours, then weekends and public holidays. As she realizes she has more and more money to replace him with, and her specialized knowledge of obscure arts is cracking with age, and the only gold she has is wrapped tightly around her finger. Rafe is right. Give them a few years for their despairs to flower, and they'll be perfect. But I have days, maybe hours. I get out of the car, straighten my tie in the wing mirror, and head for the property. Mr. and Mrs. arrive on time, announcing themselves to the street with an avalanche of clattering heels and muttered swearing. They walk with all the arrogance of a young couple, masquerading as shambolic, bickering, and boundlessly confident. The simmering resentment of their argument helps, so the door whispers open to a brightly lit corridor. The air soft and warm on the skin as they step in from the cool afternoon. The shadows of leaves dance on the hallway walls, hinting at an Arcadia just beyond the combi boiler. In the bedroom, bedside lamps cast friendly glows on the burnished terracotta accent wall. The newly made bed lacking only a chocolate on a pillow. The carpets are plump and fresh, like spring meadows beckoning bare toes to relish in their pile. In the dining room, a shaft of sunlight picks out the vase of pussy willow, complete with silvery silken nubs. Mr. and Mrs. immediately fall into their roles, their conflicts suppressed so easily, and start planning out their new lives, where their TV will go. It's 4K, 72 inches total beast, you know. And then the sofa, the prints, the cabinet for displaying Mrs. Potts. How well their linen suits the walls, the red, such a bold choice. Soon they've held dinner parties with Tracy and Alex, and Alex and Alex. The tipped heads and laughs, as they tell me. We only make friends with people called Alex. And they open kitchen cupboards, barely looking inside. Just don't tell Tracy. Mrs. lets slip a hushed, perfectly enunciated, "Oh fuck," when she opens the last cabinet, and a sharp twist of metal from an old broken latch just inside the door bites at her finger. She sucks a drop of blood from the tip, and looks at me nervously. "Sorry, that hurt a bit." Takes more than that to upset an estate agent. Don't you worry, we'll get that fixed right away. Mr. isn't paying attention to his wife. Instead, leaning over the sink to peer into the garden. The window isn't the only thing not gleaming clean. Or the window is the only thing not gleaming clean. He huffs a heavy breath, which vanishes into the glass as the landlord steals it away, onto a smudge, and wipes with his sleeve to make a tiny clean patch. He can see thick brambles and tall grass. "Do upstairs not use it at all?" he asks. "Not really, as you can see. Upstairs mostly keep to themselves. I'm sure they'd be delighted if you wanted to take it on as a project." The couple flinch. Mr. gasping in shock, as an air bubble suddenly squeals through a pipe like a distant howling dog. "You would need to ask permission first. Of course." Mrs. laughs and says, "He's not really a gardener. More like a concrete-it-all kind of guy. Aren't you, babe?" He replies, "I could be up for it. Look, it's west-facing. Lovely light in the evening. We could have barbecues. I can finally show Alex how to make a proper burger. I have the best recipe." Mrs. continues to suck at her finger, which hasn't stopped bleeding. She looks like a little girl upset at Daddy, while Mr. dreams of the man he'll never be. I tell them, "I'll give you a couple minutes to yourselves." Paltry morsels. I grow more hungry with every rotation of this pathetic globe. I remember how it felt when we first saw your kind shining in the darkness. We grew fat on your souls, even as you cowered. We were titans you dreamed of capturing in stories. You so few but so bright, swollen, that with light in your hovels. You were succulent. Your essence cascaded through me as I gorged myself. Endless forest covered this world. a vast animus that sang like the spirit strikes of home, root and claw, earth and taint. But the parasite has no regard for the beauty of the host. You have sullied your flesh, made poison of your flesh. Your tiny cruelties, cobbles and bricks, and fire and concrete and cities and smog and wealth and cholera and poverty and rivers of shit and buried tunnels and vermin and rust and rot and mold and waste and tiny jealousies and gold and gold and gold and luxury and greed and ownership. So little made from so much. My empire is reduced to solitary watchtowers. My army is a facile child. My altar, this house. Just once more. One great meal, and I will rip open the air, return to the beautiful shadows where space is dream, where all these limbs and muscles and flesh and blood and bodies are nothing. I come too slowly, drifting in and out of the narcoleptic haze the landlord leaves me with after a consultation. It has returned to wherever it spends its time. It is dark. The 4:30s left hours ago. I'm on the bathroom floor. So I push myself up on the bath to turn the light on. The bulb carves stark shapes from the room, leaving thick slabs of shadow behind every angle. In the mirror, I check the extent of the abuse. My face is sore, where I must have bruises forming. A whispery gray form behind me seems to caress my cheek. I double over as hunger staples my stomach into ever smaller pouches. I breathe deeply until the pain clears. Eventually, I draw water from the sink for a drink, hoping I can trick my starving body into quieting, if just for a moment. Looking at the mirror again, I see my eyes are bloodshot, with shadowy bags underneath. And the dragged finger marks smears on the glass tell me it tried to reach something in the reflection again. What was it looking for? Can it open a doorway there? Truly? Does it just like torturing me? My stomach unleashes its fury again in all-consuming cramps. I need to sleep. To eat. The doorbell rings. Strange. It's late. Early Saturday evening. Nothing's booked. My clients are all preparing for nights out with loud music and shitty coke. I check my phone. No messages from Misha. Water break. I head for the front door, leaning on walls to stop myself tumbling to the floor. I open the door to find a woman who looks as exhausted as I feel. 40-something, mousy hair, on her way to Kirby, dressed in high street denim. I doubt she can afford this place. She was pretty, once, past the wrinkles that had consumed her youth, under the black bags of her eyes. Her hair is loose around her shoulders, the collar of her jacket high and then buttoned closed. She quivers, like she's on the cusp of screaming. A tiny face peeks from behind her thigh, snotty, tearful, and full of the remorseless sorrow of a child. The woman breathes in sharply, spreading her hands to grab the invisible reins of the doorstep, as if she's afraid it will buck and throw her back to the curb. I saw the sign. The to let sign. And I saw the light on. I thought maybe I could... Could I? A bit of an emergency, really. Her smile is all mania and fear. It's time for me to be knocking off and getting what sleep I can before Sunday's viewings. Behind her, a group of lads walk along the street, chattering like rooks, no doubt heading for the pub. It's the time when the drinkers annex the streets for another night. No place for a child. I need to go home, swallow as many painkillers as I can, and force down whatever food the landlord will allow me. Wash, try to sleep. But the way this mother keeps shooting glances over her shoulder gets to me. It's not those lads. She wants to be off the street. I step back and welcome her in with an arm. I say, "Sure, I've got a bit of time. Nothing planned for tonight anyway. Let me show you around. It can be a lovely place for the right viewers." She scuttles into the hall, pulling her daughter with her, and shuts the door quickly. Her eyes linger on the locks an extra moment, as if she's memorizing each one, learning how it can be opened, lost in a private catechism. She gives herself permission to breathe again. A catechism, my bad. She rests both palms on the door for a moment, then says, "Love the place. How much is it? I can move in tomorrow. All packed and ready to go. I can pay the deposit. I've got some money put aside, really, honestly. How much is it?" "It might be best if you call the office in the morning." "No, sorry. No. I need a place right now. I'll sign whatever you want. Please." She pushes past me down the hall, turning sideways to fit through the space, so that her jacket catches the button at the neck popping open, giving me a flash of finger marks on her throat. Dark, livid, deep. She quickly closes the buttons and disappears into the kitchen. I bend down to the little girl, who is still in the hallway with me, smile, and put out my hand for a shake. "Hello? I'm Frances. Do you want to live here with your mummy?" The girl looks past me, then runs after her mother in silence. I follow through the door to find the girl tugging her mother's elbow and whispering loudly, "I don't like it here, Mummy. I don't like it." Behind them, in the bathroom, I see an oil-thick shadow vanish through the doorway. Catch a glimpse of a baleful red eye blinking closed in the bathroom mirror, the cabinet mirror. The landlord never comes to the property until it's ready. For it to show itself now means... I walk over to them and start to lead the pair of them out of the house. The mother tries to shrug off the arm I extend over her shoulder, and then grunts in pain and shock as I shove her into a wall. "Sorry, but I actually can't have you here. I'd lose my job if they thought I was doing things off the books." At the door to the hallway, the mother starts to push back, out of some instinct for resistance, punching me weakly with a courage she is clearly still new to. The girl is retreating down the hallway, turning to the front door to open it. There's a loud thump, as if a wardrobe fell to the ground upstairs, followed by the sound of something heavy dragging across the floor. Just once. Chilly tendrils reach from my back, scraping at my skin with a thick, viscous quality. My skull tightens, as if claws are squeezing me, and the tips are chiseling into my temples, and in the center of the fractured seam at the top, my fontanelle, where once a throbbing membrane of skin was the frailest of partitions between my mind and that which is. I grip the doorframe around me tightly, feeling my nails digging into the wood, splinters shooting up into the nail beds. The pain, the physical pain of my body gives me focus, pulls me back into myself. I keep clawing at the wood, dragging the flesh and bones of myself over the threshold, reclaiming myself from the landlord one traumatized nerve at a time. From the garden path, the mother stares at me in anger and confusion at her eviction. I tell her quickly while I still can. "We'll get you signed up tonight. Not a problem. Come with me to the office so we can do all the paperwork." The mother breaks and she starts sobbing openly with relief, a lightness in her voice as she starts thanking me over and over. I barely hear it. Just usher her out of the garden, telling her to wait there while I lock up. I will go to the agency straight away. This endless gabbling sales patter coming out of my mouth while I'm focusing all my will on pulling the door shut behind us. The pain in my guts expands to fill my entire torso, bubbles of agony bursting in my lungs. I feel like a constellation of flesh. I burn with an acidic compulsion to go back into the house, my feet dissolving with every step I take further away. The tendrils have thickened to tentacles, wrapping themselves around me, ripping away my skin, then immediately coiling around me once more like an insatiable polyp. Somehow, I stop myself from screaming. Her. The child. Now. Misha looks up in a panic as we walk into the office, scraping the line on his desk into the bin. The mother and girl wait nervously by the entrance as I walk to the back to talk to him. He bats his nostrils back and forth, sniffing repeatedly, and says, "What you doing here, Frankie? Past business hours. I'm closing up in a minute." Big night planned, is it? Of course it is. Always is for his type. Just wrapping today's sales. Rafe did Tiverton Street. 200 over asking. Drinks to celebrate. You know how it is. Thanks, Misha. I didn't, but I do now. I'm not doing new clients. Lionel's got the morning. Settle him with it. Come spend some time with the lads. It's said out of good form as much as anything. There's no expectation that I'll actually go, or that they'd be happy if I came. I can't afford their lifestyle, and they don't understand mine. It's just how it's done. I don't give a shit, though. I need him gone. I'll do it. Got a good feeling about this one, you know? Leave the sales. I can do those as well. Misha doesn't hesitate. For a second. Breaking out a Harley Street smile and saying, "Brick! You're a total brick, Frankie. I owe you one." He swirls his coat up off the floor and shoots out the door to whatever basement cocktail bar Ray found on TikTok this week. The landlord's grip on me weakened as soon as I made it out of the house. It knows I must bring it what it wants through official channels, that it can't risk close investigations of the flat. So, it had to let me go. Even so, I feel weaker than ever. Taking a water break. I slump into my chair as the mother and girl settle into theirs on the opposite side of the desk. The mother keeps her coat buttoned tight, sitting ramrod straight on the edge of the seat. The girl frets the cuffs of her coat, tugging at a loose thread in silence. I search our list of active properties, hoping it's still available, relieved to find it is. None of the guys care about filling it, the owner being a human. Worst of all, a human who has given us explicit instructions to hold the rent below market rates. One Mrs. Wetherell, owner of the two-up terrace next door to hers, her mom's old place, empty since she bought the neighboring property and moved into that. This lady has lived either side of one wall her entire life. It's small, but clean. In good school catchments, it is too far from the station to attract commuters. The photos show 70s textured wallpaper, swirly brown carpet, and commemoration plates on the wall for every royal wedding. At least, until Charles and Camilla. There's a vast wealth of shortbread available for anyone savvy enough to compliment her baking. I take down their names. Maisie is the mother, Alba the girl, and just a few more details, trying to avoid it coming across as interrogation. She's been through enough. The bruises on her neck are like ink stains from a glove. Maisie breaks down when I eventually show her the property and she hears the price. Maisie needs a place to live, not a manifestation of ambition and brick and designer furniture. She needs a door she can lock. She needs to be able to take a breath and know that the next will happen just as easily. Mrs. Wetherell just wants nice people to live next to her. Mrs. Wetherell just wants some company. Macy hugs her daughter tightly and says, "You'll be okay, honey. We can make this work. New school, new friends, new start." Alba whispers back, "I don't want new friends. I already have friends. I don't want to move, Mummy." "I know, darling, but we have to live somewhere new, now that Daddy's sick." She looks up at me, pleading with me silently to condone her deception, begging me for mercy, as if I am master of her destiny. All I do is let Flatson lie to people. Alba asks her mother, "Is this going to be like the other house? I didn't like the other house. The bathroom troll was scary." "What bathroom troll, darling? You didn't even see the bathroom." The girl clams up and glares at me with fury her mother should be letting out. She knows. Fuck knows how, but she knows. I wish it was a troll. Something contained within arms and legs and teeth. Something that could be killed. If she knew what that splintered orb in the mirror belonged to, the swollen protuberances of its limbs, the endless twitching tentacles, the tiny biting mouths that open up at random across its body. I don't even know how many of them there are. How many companies exist to serve them? What if they're everywhere? Hiding under factories and warehouses as well. What if my one is the runt of the litter? A bullied god of hate punching down. I checked the agency records once, but they're encrypted. So I only know the entity that uses me as its tool. I hope that they only exist in this country, that there are places free of their infestation. I pray, though I know it isn't true, that I'm the only slave they control. I don't even have a name for them, despite how intimately they violate me. It's different for Rafe and Misha. His kind are employees, inheriting that fig leaf of freedom. Rafe told me that I'm the only person they've told the truth, that no one else outside of their families even knows they exist. I've been fucked ever since they got me high and opened their box of secrets to me, flushed with serotonin, my saucer eyes gazing into the abyss. They told me we were brothers, joined by something greater than us. And fool that I was, I believed them. All I know is that without them, our agency would shrivel and die. Shutters pulled on shiny offices across the city. Maybe the country. Inheritances would evaporate. Misha would need to pick a cheaper drug habit, or find another host company to burrow into. Rafe would float on into another fortune, impervious to it all. The other junior agents, the ones who believe all we do is let flats, would need to get actual jobs, and I pray for it every day. I've seen the glistening flesh of a boneless snake running through the pipes, drinking down the effluents, every drop of piss and blood, every scummy watered bath. I've coddled nervous tenants, telling them that the noises from the roof are anything but ravenous creepers, a multitude of them hunting with one mind, each little more than claws and scales and hate. I've tutted and sighed about sound insulation when I know the bricks whisper and scream and fight and smash and howl in their dreams every night. I've prattled on about architectural oddities, causing feelings of claustrophobia, as the very space around us is being chewed upon like cud, and the room sucks the life from its inhabitants in a desperate act of self-preservation. I've watched people twitch and fidget, their hindbrain knowing something isn't right, even as they tell me they love the place, not feeling everything reflecting back on themselves, their thoughts gulped down and spat out half chewed, their hopes and souls flayed in layers so fine they never notice how they're diminished, how every sudden draft passing over them is another piece of their essence consumed by the landlord. I realized after a few weeks working at the agency just how many I have lived with in my life. All the shitty house shares, I've tolerated. The years my asthma flared up, my eyelids erupting into hives with allergies, the smothering weight of depression trapping me in bed. The country has been infested with them for centuries, but only now I know they are there. I can see them. Now I'm like Raveslot, profiting by helping the parasites. The obscene cost of renting a home is the final insult, the banality of hiding darkness under the naked cruelties of money. I used to think I was responsible, that my choices had some kind of effect. But there is no choice, not while the landlords are still here, not while a few people can get rich. That's what I think as I look at Maisie hugging her daughter tightly, lest the wind rip her from her arms. Nothing I've done can be changed. I'm complicit, just like we all are. All I can change is what I do next. Maisie has escaped, and Alba has never known anything else. I can't give them to the landlord. It's past 10 p.m. when I unlock the door of my one-bed flat on the edge of the industrial estate near where the bypass spews endless traffic into the city every hour of every day. It was sold as a new build years ago, morphing into something uncategorized and undesired now that the newness has worn off. It's a shell, at best, full of draughts, leaking seals, and cracked housings on the appliances. But that's it. With my parents, content with their middle-class careers in the town hall, but all their wealth tied up in equity, a mortgage is an impossible dream for me. The bank of Mum and Dad is already in hock, so I am slaved to the indenture of my home, paying rent on credit and paying off the credit with my salary. If I pay to have the mattress steam cleaned, I can't pay for a dehumidifier to stop the mold. Do I fix a leaking washing machine or the dripping cistern that stops me from sleeping? The lock on the front door or the bedroom window? Why bother at all when the frames of both are warped? I kick the clothes strewn across my bedroom floor into a pile and straighten the bedding. As Maisie follows to lay a barely conscious Alba down to sleep, I head for the kitchen as she settles her daughter, looking through the cupboards for anything I can make dinner from. Tomato puree, a huge bag of paprika. I'm sure was here before. Oh, a huge bag of paprika. I'm sure was here before I moved in, and 1 tin of red kidney beans. I guess you could make chili. A kind of a shitty chili. The fridge is empty except for a can of Red Bull. I close it and turn around to see Maisie standing in the doorway studying me. She's taken off her coat. At last. Tucked her hair behind her shoulder to reveal the extent of the bruises. She fronts well, not showing me any weakness. I take my keys from my pocket and slide them across the tiny kitchen table toward her. Water break. That's the only set. No bolt in the bedroom door, but there's a few weeks' worth of laundry you can block it up with. I'll sleep on the sofa. She picks up the keys in silence, coils a fist around them so they stick out between the fingers. What do you want from me? What's the price? Nothing. Penance. Salvation. She sniffs, looks back over her shoulder to the bedroom, hearing the twist of duvet or some tiny whimper from Alba, perhaps. You try a single fucking thing, and I will kill you in your sleep. I nod, not really sure what to say. She takes a moment longer to think, then says, Do you want some dinner? I am a hollow ghoul, thinner than I have ever been. I chew on my own fingers, or I'd chew my own fingers to the bone if I thought I could keep it down. Christ knows what I look like to her, taut and shivering with nerves, hunched over the vacuum of my stomach. Can't really cook much, I confess. I can cook. There's nothing in the house anyway. You look hungry, you know? Like, not well. She makes me laugh, despite it all. Not well. As if there's a cure for what I have. But people do eat. Normal people, at least. That's what I should be doing. Maybe that's what she needs. A normal night, doing normal things. I grab my coat, check my wallet is in there, and say, I'll go buy some bits. Buzz me back in, yeah? She nods. Something in her relaxing as she realizes I'm leaving her in my home, that I'm offering my secrets up to her without asking her any questions, that she can lock me out. I squint against the bright lights of the corner shop as I fill a basket with vegetables and chicken, trying to remember what a meal looks like. Tightly stacked rows of boxes and tins, with their glossy images of meat, fruit, and vegetables, look like the building blocks of something I no longer understand. Back at the flat, I find Maisie drying my pans, the kitchen newly cleaned. She takes the bag and waves me to sit down with a soapy hand. She works in silence, and I am too tired to ask any questions. My life is an endless, meaningless chatter, and I already know everything I need to know about her. The next half hour is filled with scents as she prepares a meal. Simple, homely, rich, herby smells that fill my house and my head. When she puts the plate in front of me, I am surprised to find myself hungry, my stomach gurgling in anticipation. I take a fork and lift a tiny amount to my mouth, blowing gently to cool it. Maisie watches me keenly. There's little trust in her silence. She stands leaning against the counter, my chef's knife next to her. She'll barricade herself in with her daughter until morning. I know. But first, I'll eat. The 4:30s are holding hands and harmonious when they arrive for the second viewing. Rehearsals went well then. They are dressed for a party. Mr. in chinos and a pastel shirt, a jumper most unironically over his shoulders. Mrs. in a flowing cotton Laurel Ashley dress and bright green wedges. Their chat all reminders that Alex is a stickler for punctuality. Not like Alex. Ha ha. Oh, Alex. At least Alex buys Sabra hummus, none of that wallpaper paste they sell at Sainsbury's. Ha ha ha. Mrs. runs delicate fingers capped with immaculate nails and a sticking plaster over the furniture as she chatters. A mantra of privilege I've seen 100 times. This time, they play their parts perfectly. Mr. goes out into the garden, treading down the brambles, and maybe he doesn't hear the chitters and rustling of vermin in the undergrowth, because he comes back tutting and wiping his hands like a mechanic hoping to fleece some old deer out of their pension. It really would be such a lot of work. Almost worth a reduction in the rent. Mrs. is waiting for him in the kitchen, peering at the boiler with feigned comprehension. She turns back to me slowly, leading with her head, her finger lingering on the fitting with languid ease. When was this last serviced? Really, we were expecting a heat exchange system for this price. Behind her, the shower curtain flicks out of the bath like a snake's tongue. It's draughty, too. When did you say the windows were installed? They are full of their parents' standards. hoping to shape the world the only way they've been shown how. The shadows in the bathroom strengthen, pulling in more light, as claws scratch at my temples. The 430s have misread the power dynamic and failed to account for all factors. They think they're up against me and my cheap suit. Misha has told me how none of the landlords like negotiating, and that this one is one of the worst. It despises anything other than total acceptance of its terms. Wheedling and bargaining hastens its hunger, shortening the eventual tenancy. Talk of rights and duties sparks cacophonous outpourings. Sacrifice must be willing. I usher Mr. and Mrs. away from the bathroom and back to the front bedroom, where weak sunlight barely pierces the growing gloom. We file into the room, the couple settling into the angles of the bay window, and convene around the bed under the sodden pottery color of the accent wall. I share a quick glance, Mrs. giving a barely perceptible nod, revealing which of their parentage carries more weight. Mr. beams back at her, stuffing his hands in his pockets to hide his excited fidgeting. Mrs. is more restrained, offering a tiny smile as she says, "Hey, no worries. Thanks for saying hi. Hope you're having fun. I'm sure it's nice." Probably. I don't think the weather's probably nice, and hey, enjoy. That's what we're here for. I'm sure the weather's nice. It's a bit cold where I am, but it's spring going into summer, you know? We'd like to make an offer. How many other viewings do you have? Just a couple more this weekend, I say, swallowing a retch. It would make no sense to them how little their money changes things here. I long to scream, "Yes, take the fucking flat. I hope you will die in this bed." Except long, hateful fingers are squeezing my chest and pushing me into the carpet. My body doesn't feel my own as I say, "I have to finish this round of viewings. Give me a call at the office tomorrow and we can talk it over then." They are clearly at a loss as I usher them to the front door. Now, finally, they have noticed something that isn't right. Sacred covenant has been broken, that of wealth's command. They carry the petulant faces of children in first encountering the banal horror of the world. Their toys are no use here. Mrs. looks back into the bedroom one last time, her gaze on the pillows so fat and welcoming. She's dreaming of mornings they would spend here, stories to tell their future children, except her father didn't warn her about mattresses. Fathers only ever think about boilers. They don't like to think about their daughters all sweating and drooling and fucking on the same mess of fabric and coiled metal. They forget about legions of mites and worms and parasites that colonize the spaces closest to our skin. They cannot imagine inhuman intelligence permeating our flesh and coiling around our inner beings with every slumbering breath. I follow them, keeping my gaze on the couple, out to the street as I lock the door. The landlord has to let me go out, or let me go. But it still tears at me as I deadlock the door, my skin feeling so tight it might rip, my fingers splaying against the dank paintwork of the door. Feeling like I am pulling a tooth from my jaw, I tuck the key free. Quick water break. All my power pushed into so little flesh, so weak, incapable of mastering even yourself. How dare you be so tiny, so undeserving? What use are you? What function have your kind? What indignity that we even converse? You protoplasm, you molecule, you prion. Civilizations have waded through mud in my honor. I have bathed in the souls of creatures who barely knew my name as a whisper in the darkness. I was adored, enduring their outpourings of love like the filth it was. Yet you, moat. Feel me within your skin. You, atom, defy me. You will bring me the mother. I will have her child. And then I will sear every particle of your being from this plane. I will sunder your essence into a multitude of sufferings and cast them from the fields of home. Eternity will be yours. Mrs. Wetherell slides a plate. Elizabeth II and Philip, original, judging by the aging of the gloss, of chocolate chip cookies, towards Alba. The girl has opened up in her presence, a willing victim to Mrs. Wetherell's ancient magics. Mrs. Wetherell then offers a shortbread to Maisie, and lastly me. Come on, lad, you look a bit peaky. I'm not one to brag, but these shortbreads were good enough for a lord in 1987. They look fresher than that, I say with a wink. Mrs. Wetherell laughs and says, You wicked boy. Ask the Garibaldi's for you, then. Only good boys and girls get my shortbread. I laugh for the audience, but the early morning sun cuts through me like a knife. Or maybe it's easier to blame the light for how the darkness is slicing me up. It's all I can do to sip water. The landlord is weaker here, on the other side of town, but it still wants my attention every second. And I can feel it scratching across the roofs, up and down the streets, searching for me. I leave them to bond, barely able to concentrate on talk of schools, homework, and favorite animals. I'm not needed anymore. I'm nothing more than a glorified administrator now that I've arranged the introduction. But when Mrs. Wetherell says, What made you decide to move with the little one? I jump into Maisie's moment of hesitation. I can see how the question drags her back in an instant to the violence she's desperate to escape. Violence that is still happening for her, right now. I can see her trying to condense everything that led her here, with just Alba's ragged unicorn, a rucksack of clothes, and her bruises, into the words that will convince this kindly old lady to take her in. But she can't speak without ripping her heart out of her chest and dropping it onto collector's china to drip blood between biscuits and royal paramours. Maisie has lived by will alone for who knows how long. It's clear to me she's not even sure she made a decision, or she just ran. So I speak for her. I take that choice away from her. I manipulate people, no doubt about it, but sometimes I can do it for the right reasons. I lean over to Mrs. Wetherell, giving a conspirator's wink, and tell her they've been looking for somewhere quiet, away from the noise. They're knocking down some ex-local flats next door, the solid ones from the 1950s. They don't make them like that anymore, do they, Mrs. W? You know those new apartment buildings? No sound insulation at all. It's diggers and cranes all day. One bad neighbor, and they get so much homework, from such a young age these days. Exactly on cue, the granny I wish I'd had tips her head and says, Oh, poor pet. It must be so hard bringing up the little one like that. Have you a garden? No outside space. Well, that won't do. The little ones need to be outside. I know you've been looking for some nice, trustworthy tenants. I've known Maisie and Alba here for years. Maisie shoots me a glance, surprised at the ease of my lies. To tell you the truth, I got them that last flat. I didn't know about the new developments, and we had no idea what the neighbors were like. I swear. I felt awful ever since. But then I realized I could make it up to them both. She swallows it all, of course, and Maisie keeps her lips clamped shut. Mrs. Wetherell lives in a world where dishonesty is a thing for television and the newspapers. People don't really lie to each other. Not real people. No one could ever look a mother in the eye as they're gouging her for every penny she's got. No one would hit a child. She pats me on the hand and says, I'm not making mistakes that matters. It's not making mistakes that matters. Oops. It's not making mistakes that matters, but what you do after. Bless you, my boy. Now, you two young ladies, would you like to come see the garden? I hope you like strawberries. I can never eat the whole crop. I head into the kitchen, following the lingering smells of baking out to the sunny garden. They are already meshing into a new family, both Maisie and Mrs. Wetherell smiling as little Alba dashes out to the back door, turning back to beam a smile at us before skipping onto the lawn. I can't watch them for long. Something about the purity of the scene makes my scalp itch. It's like happiness can't find a home in me, and instead is crawling the inside of my skull in search of an escape route. I retreat to my car, planning to confirm bookings with more young couples, more new builds, more prefabricated units, more tributes. But as I settle into my seat, my phone rings. An unknown number. Is that Francis? Speaking. Who's calling? It's about the flat. I've been looking over a few numbers and, well, I would like to make the landlord an offer. Mr. 3. Lionel probably gave him my number, the conniving little shit. And Misha put him up to it, I'm sure. I'm not in a position to negotiate. You should speak to Lionel in the office. He told me to call you. It's a good offer. 15% over. It's a good price. You won't get more than that far from the station. The tone of his delivery is quite incredible. In his mind, the conversation is already complete, and we're just going through the motions. Really, I can't. How about I mail it over? I'll do that now, okay? It's the way he says okay that triggers me. The exactitude that would flatten my agency, render me just as a tool at his disposal. People shouldn't be used. People shouldn't conform to tiny expectations. People should be wild and unpredictable and fierce. I hold the phone before me, surface to the sky like a prayer as I respond. I said no, so fuck off. I hang up. The coat hangers scrape at my skull the moment I get out of my car, dragging me toward the door of the flat. I brace myself against the vehicle, dry heaving a wisp of tar. My phone pings loudly. Misha has sent me the tenancy agreement for the 430s. Agency boilerplate, locking them into 24 months, with rent reviews at months 12 and 18, and no right to appeal. He included one of his usual inspirational notes as well. Fuck-de-doodle me, golden nips. You suddenly grown a pair? You might just last in this gig after all. That or 200 carnations for Mumsy next week. I've got 100 pounds with Clarence, you don't sign it. So chin up, my proly baby. M. XOXO. Proly is crazy. The truth is, I've never heard of anyone attempting to force a tenant on a landlord. Rafe has joked about it once or twice, in a fit of coked-up bravado late on a Friday night, but it's just one of a multitude of empty brags that he spouts. He struts like a cock when it's just us in front of him, but I saw how he looked the night he came back from Bula Road, after the tenants vanished. 10 days they'd lived there. Not even a fortnight. He never said what happened, but he was white as ash, and he shredded the invoice from the cleaning agency before any of us could see it. Something broke in him that night. An essential part of his inhumanity collapsed. I think all the stories came true, all at once, and he didn't like the feel of blood on his hands. I'm sure Misha thinks Rafe lost his nerve, but I think maybe he found a little bit of it. He called his dad and started handing over clients shortly after. But something has to change. Can't all be slaves to so few masters. The landlords don't eat us all, so maybe they can't. Maybe that's the great lie they hide with violence. There has to be hope. For now, I wait, leaning on the garden wall so the landlord can take reassuring nips, and knowing I'm in its grip. I watch pigeons peck discarded fried chicken at the bus stop opposite. A butterfly strays into the road, buffeted into oblivion by a passing SUV. Overhead, an endless sequence of planes jettison carbon dioxide into the upper atmosphere. Life continues. Water break? Eventually, the 4:30s arrive, proceeding down the footpath hand in hand, strutting like they've just arrived from a photo shoot. Mrs. has an improbable curl in her hair, while Mrs. has an improbable curl in her hair, while Mr. has a box-fresh fade. The curly thatch on top preserved with all its manufactured misdemeanor. Their gloss and makeup don't quite hide the bags under their eyes, but otherwise it's a perfect performance. They look like the affluent boomers their parents are, that they're one inheritance away from becoming. I run them through the contract in the garden, trusting in momentum and a confident delivery to stop them asking to go inside. Not yet. I need one more thing. If you could just sign here and here. They extend long, elfin fingers to complete their covenants on the tablet. Mrs. signs first, the sacred acts reduced to tutting and clumsy thumbs. Mr. may as well be at nursery making finger paintings. No matter. The deeds are binding, however crude their assent. I tap submit, sending the landlord its notice of the new tenants. I know it's coming. I know this pain. I hiss through my teeth anyway, as the landlord's fury takes hold. Mr. and Mrs. exchange a worried glance as they take the keys from my shaking fingers. I don't hear anything else. Maybe I waved them goodbye. Maybe I wished them well in their new home. Maybe I slipped through the cracks in the paving. Maybe I was sucked into the bowels of the earth by a ravenous claw to suffer my punishment. Maybe the landlord tossed me away like a bird's carcass. I know I next feel myself slumping against the car door. I open it and curl up on the back seat, wrapped around the nimbus of my stomach. The acidic knot, the pain. It's like nothing else. A vast wall shutting out the heavens, shutting out the heavens, shutting out us all, a whipping lash of hot wire coiled through my arteries. I am become rage. The wall flashes by at unimaginable speed. Scales the size of cities shatter the clouds. This world is dark and pungent and not mine. This inconceivable edifice hurtles into space. The scales, so many scales. This behemoth has swallowed God, and it turns now. I see, too late. I am not my own. I belong to this, and it opens an eye the size of eternity and gazes down on me, alone, mote, nothing in all this creation other than... You own nothing. You are mine. That moving house is stressful, is well known these days, but Anna and Michael are proud of how they deal with the job together. They save money by doing it all themselves, rather than booking a removal service. Instead, Anna borrows a van from a local branch of Daddy's company, and they graciously accept Alex's offer to help with the boxes. Moving in summer means open windows, with the radio turned to Magic FM. Bill Withers reminds them it's going to be a lovely day, as Anna unpacks the Wedgwood dinner service, the Le Creuset dishes, and the carbon steel pans. Michael sorts the books by color, something Anna saw on Instagram and loved the idea of, on their mahogany shelves. Those, a wedding present from Auntie Moll. They end the first day with pizza from their new local wood-fired oven takeaway, sipping one of their Viogniers they normally save for Alex and Alex. But the rest of the wine hasn't chilled yet, and they're celebrating. It's just such a shame the nice wine glasses are at the bottom of the pile of boxes in the kitchen. Oop, Alright, I'm gonna just scoot these for a second. But who's here? Exhausted? This is a horror story specifically, so the next one is more sci-fi tinged. This one is a horror story that I read a little while ago on this site, and I was like, this might be a good first stream, but it doesn't go with most of the sci-fi stuff, which is a little bit more. I mean, it kind of ends optimistically, but it is a horror story, so in any case, rest well. At the bottom of the pile of boxes in the kitchen right now. They won't get to them for another 2 days, distracted as they are by making the bed and sorting the wardrobes out and taking a break to walk in their new local park before sharing their first shower in their new home. Slippery hands running across each other's bodies with giggles as the spores drift in the air, catch in the water, and are massaged into their skin lovingly. You're welcome. Feeling naughty, they dash naked through the flat to the bed, toss the duvet off, and exhaust their lust in a tangle of limbs and water. They doze after, at once sated and filled with cupidity. Gently, Michael is the first to cough. I definitely feel like this is one of the better, more cohesive stories. I mean, I usually try to pick the ones that I like the most, but this is like, for the horror stories, I think this is one of the better ones I've read on this website. I hope you enjoyed. George Sandison is an editor, independent publisher, and writer. He spends his days heading up the fiction team at Titan Books, if you've heard of them, a found family of nerds deeply committed to the infinite wonders of genre fiction. Before that, he ran the multiple award-winning indie press Unsung Stories, which closed in 2023. I have not heard of those. When not using his professional guises to smuggle unexpectedly weird stories onto unsuspecting bookshelves, he likes to write unexpectedly weird stories. His short collection Hinterlands is published by Black Shuck Books. Lives in London, a few minutes' walk from ancient forests and 24-hour trains. I might check this out. I really like this guy's writing style, at least in this story. And apparently he writes weird stories. It might be a boon to check it out. I was talking to Floyd about Murderbot Diaries. The thing about it is, of course, for these, I like to have the story on screen. Like, I don't think it would be as good if I was just on screen reading a physical book, so I need to be able to find a digital copy of it, of something that I wanted to read like that. Which is a challenge. It is funny to think, like, that's a specific thing that's hard to do. Like, generally, if you own some sort of physical media, you can, find it in whatever capacity. You have, like, a license to it wherever it is. But physical books still don't have that, which is maybe for the best, right? The purpose of not having that ability with physical books is to keep physical books relevant, like, as an item in society, I suppose. But yeah. Not too much rambling. I'm gonna take like a 5-minute break, drink some water, finish this yogurt, and then we'll start the next story, which is much shorter than this. This was 10,000 words. But I really enjoyed it. I remember when I started reading it, I was like, this is really good. This is doing something for me. Yeah, it felt good to read. So I'll be right back. Leave you guys with the sounds of the fireplace. just to chat a little bit while I'm just chilling here. I'm just really glad you've seen any of the VODs previous. Early this week, I had like a catastrophic stream failure in that the encoding on OBS was just absolutely shitting. I had to reset everything, and I'm glad that it works. Like this comment widget that I'm using, I like it a lot, but I thought that was what was causing the problem, and I'm glad it wasn't because it's fun, you know. It's punchy, it's cute, you know, and I like being able to see you guys' comments on screen. So I did, however, have to delete the marathon stream, but I'm thinking about maybe playing some marathon tomorrow. Definitely gonna play before the reset. So there's that. Hello. Thank you for your patience. Second story is Earth Hour. This is very early on. This website's clearly been around for a while. I'm assuming this is the published date on the website. It's like the third story in the original fictions column. So it's way back. Story by Ken McLeod. Illustrated by Rob Ruppel. Edited by Patrick Nielsen Hayden. Earth Hour. It's set in Australia. I don't know if you can tell. But it is more cyberpunk adjacent, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about in just a moment. One more rinsing sip of water. The assassin slung the bag, concealing his weapons, over his shoulder, and walked down the steps to the rickety wooden jetty. He waited as Sydney Harbour ferry puttered into Neutral Bay, cast on, and then cast off at the likewise tiny quay on the opposite bank, and crossed the 100 or so meters to Carrabba Point. He boarded, waved a hand, gloved in artificial skin across the fare taker, and settled on a bench near the prow, with the weapon, in its tiny blue nylon zipped bag, balanced across his knees. The sun was just above the horizon in the west, the sky clear but for the faint luminous haze of smart dust, each drifting particle of which could at any moment deflect a photon of sunlight and sparkle before the watching eye. A slow rain of shiny soot, removing carbon from the air as it drifted down, providing a massively redundant platform for observation and computation. A platform the assassin's augmented eyes used to form an image of the city and its environs. In his likewise augmented visual cortex, he turned the compound image over in his head, watching traffic flows and wind currents, the homeward surge of commuters and the flocking of fruit bats, the exchange of pheromones and cortex messages, the jiggle of stock prices and the tramp of 1,000,000 feet, in one single godlike POV that saw it all 6 ways from Sunday, and that too soon became intolerable, dizzying the unaugmented tracts of the assassin's still mostly human brain. One could get drunk on this. The assassin wrenched himself from the hubristic stochastic and focused, narrowing his attention until he found the digital spore of the man he aimed to kill. A conference delegate pack, a train fare, a hotel tab, an airline booking for a seat that it was the assassin's job to prevent being filled the day after the conference. The assassin had followed this trail already, an hour earlier, but it amused him to confirm it and to bring it up to date. With an overhead and a street-level view of the target's unsuspecting stroll toward his hotel in Maclay Street. It amused him, too, that the target was simultaneously keeping a low profile. No media appearances, backstage at the conference, a hotel room far less luxurious than he could afford, vulgar as all hell, tarted in synthetic mahogany and artificial marble, and industrial sheet diamond, while styling himself at every opportunity with the obsolete title under which he was most widely known, as though he reveled in his contradictory notoriety as a fixer behind the scenes, famous for being unnoticed. Valtos, first of the Reform Lords. That was how the man loved to be known. The gewgaw he preened himself on, a bauble he'd earned by voting to abolish its very significance, yet still liked to play with, to turn over in his hands, to flash. What a shit, the assassin thought. What a prick. That wasn't the reason for killing him, but it certainly made it easier to contemplate. As the ferry visited its various stages, the number of passengers increased. The assassin shifted the bag from across his knees and propped it up in front of him, earning a nod and a grateful smile from the woman who sat down on the bench beside him. At Circular Quay, he carried the bag off, and after clearing the pier, he squatted and opened the bag. With a few quick movements, he assembled the collapsible bicycle inside, folded and zipped the bag to stash size, and clipped the bag under the saddle. Then he mounted the cycle and rode away to the left, around the harbor, and up the long zigzag slope to Potts Point. There was no reason for unease. Angus Cameron sat on a wicker chair in a hotel room balcony, overlooking Sydney Harbor. On the small round table in front of him, an Islay mat and a Havana panatella waited his celebration. The air was warm, his clothing loose and fresh. Thousands of fruit bats labored across the dusk sky from their daytime roosts in the botanic gardens to their nighttime feeding grounds. From 3 stories below, the vehicle sounds and voices of the street carried no warnings. Nothing was wrong, and yet something was wrong. Angus tipped back his chair and closed his eyes. He summoned headlines and charts, local and global, public and personal, business and politics. The warm war between the great power blocs, EU, Russia, PRC, versus FUS, Japan, India, Brazil, going on as usual. Diplomacy in Australasia, insurgency in Africa, nothing to worry about there. Situation, as they say, nominal. Angus blinked away the images and shook his head. He stood up and stepped back into the room and paced around. He spread his fingers wide and waved his hands about, rotating his wrists as he did so. Nothing. Not a tickle. Satisfied that the room was secure, he returned to his balcony seat. The time was 15 minutes before 8. Angus toyed with his Zippo and the glass, and with the thought of lighting up, taking a sip. He felt oddly as if that would be bad luck. It was a quite distinct feeling from the deeper unease, and easier to dismiss. Nevertheless, he waited. 10 minutes to go. At 8 minutes before 8, his right ear started ringing. He flicked his earlobe. "Yes," he said. His sister's avatar appeared in the corner of his eye, calling from Manchester, England, EU, local time, 07:52. "Oh, hello, Catriona," he said. The avatar flashed, morphing from a cartoon to a woman in her mid-30s, a few years younger than him, sitting insubstantially across from him. His little sister, looking distracted. At least, he guessed she was. They hadn't spoken for 5 months, but she didn't normally make calls with her face unwashed and hair unkempt. "Hi, Angus," Catriona said. She frowned. "I know this is maybe a bit paranoid, but is this call secure?" "Totally," said Angus. Unlike Catriona, he had a firm technical grasp on the mechanism of cortical calls, the uniqueness of each brain's encoding of sensory impulses adding a further layer of impenetrable encryption to the cryptographic algorithms routinely applied. A uniquely encoded thought struck him. Apart from someone lip-reading me, I guess. He cupped his hand around his mouth. "Okay?" Catriona looked more irritated than reassured by this demonstrative caution. "Okay," she said. She took a deep breath. "I am very dubious about the next release of the upgrade, Angus. It has at least one mitochondrial module that's not documented at all." "That's impossible," cried Angus, shocked. "It'd never get through." "It got this far," said Catriona. "No record of testing either. I keep objecting, and I keep getting told it's being dealt with, or it's not important, or otherwise fobbed off. The release goes live in a month, Angus. There's no way that module can be documented in that time, let alone tested." "I don't get it," said Angus. "I don't get it at all. If this were to get out, it would sink Synbio's stock for a start. Then there's audits and prosecutions. The authority would break them up and stamp on the bits. Forget whistleblowing. Catriona, you should take this to the authority in the company's own interests. I have, said Catriona, and I just get the same runaround. What? If you'd heard this from anyone else, Angus wouldn't have believed it. The Human Enhancement Authority's reputation was beyond reproach. Impartial, impersonal, incorruptible. It was seen as the very image of an institution entrusted with humanity's, at least European humanity's, evolutionary future. Angus was old enough to remember when software didn't just seamlessly improve day by day or hour by hour, but came out in discrete tranches called releases, several times a year. Genetic tech was still at that stage. Catriana's employer, Synbio, mostly, supplied it. The HEA checked and usually approved it, and everyone in the EU who didn't have some religious objection found the latest fix in their physical mail and swallowed it. They're stonewalling, Catriona said. Don't worry, said Angus. There must be some mistake. A bureaucratic foul-up. I'll look into it. Well, keep my name out of... The lights came on for Earth Hour. That won't be easy, Angus said, flinching and shielding his eyes as the balcony, the room, the building, and the whole sweep of its cityscape below him lit up. They'll know our connection. They'll know you've been asking. I asked you to keep my name out of it, said Catriona. I didn't say it would be easy. Look into it without bringing my own name into it. Yes, exactly. Catriona ignored his sarcasm, deliberately, from her tone. She looked around. I can't concentrate with all this going on. Catch you later. Angus waved a hand at the image of his sister, now ghostly under the blaze of the balcony's overhead lighting. I'll keep in touch, he said dryly. Bye, bro. Catriona faded. Angus lit his small cigar at last and sipped the whiskey. Ah. That was good. As was the view. The Sydney harbour was hazy in the distance, and even the gleaming shells of the opera house, just visible over the rooftops, were fuzzy at the edges. The smart dust in the air scattering the extravagant outpouring of light. Angus savoured the whiskey and cigar to their respective ends, and then went out. From the street, the light was even brighter, to the extent that Angus missed his footing occasionally as he made his way up Maclay Street towards King's Cross. He felt dazzled and disoriented, and considered lowering the gain on his eyes, but that, he felt, in some obscure way, would not only have been cheating, it would have been missing the point. The whole thing about Earth Hour was to squander electricity, and if that spree had people reeling in the streets as if drunk, that was entirely in the spirit of a celebration. It was all symbolic anyway, he thought. The event promoters knew as well as he did that the amount of CO2 being removed from the atmosphere by Earth Hour was insignificant. Only a trivial fraction of the electricity wasted was carbon negative rather than neutral. But it was the principle of the thing. Damn it. He found a table outside a bar close to Fitzroy Gardens, a tree-shaded plaza on the edge of which a transparent globe fountained water and light. He tapped an order on the table, and after a minute, a barman arrived with a tall lager on a tray. Angus tapped again to tip, and settled back to drink and think. The air was hot as well as bright, the chilled beer refreshing. Around the fountains, a dozen teenagers cooled themselves more directly, jumping in and out of the arcs of spray and splashing in the circular pool around the illuminated globe. Yells and squeals, few articulate words, probably cortexing each other. It was the thing. The youth of today, talking silently and behind your back. Angus smiled reminiscently and indulgently. He muted the enzymes that degraded the alcohol, letting himself get drunk. He could reverse it on an instant later, he thought. Then thought that the trouble with that was that you seldom knew when to do it. Except in real-life threatening emergency, being drunk meant you didn't know when it was time to sober up. You just noticed that things kept crashing. He gave the table menu a minute of baffled inspection, then swayed inside to order his second pint. The place was almost empty. Angus heaved himself onto a bar stool beside a tall, thin woman about his own age who sat alone and, to all appearances, collected crushed cigarette butts. She was just now adding to the collection, stabbing a good inch into the ashtray. A thick, tall glass of pink stuff with a straw anchored her other hand to the bar counter. She wore a singlet over a thin bra and skinny jeans above golden slingbacks. Ratty blonde hair. It was a look. "I've had two," she was explaining to the barman who wasn't listening. She swung her badly aimed gaze on Angus. "And I'm squiffy already. God, I'm a cheap date." "I'm cheaper," said Angus. "Squiffier, too. Drunk as a lord." "I used to be a lord, you know." The woman's eyes got glassier. "So you did," she said. "So you did. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Cameron." "Just call me Angus." She extended a limp hand. "Glenda Glendale." Angus gave her fingers a token squeeze, thinking that with a name like that she'd never stood a chance. "Now ain't that the truth?" Glenda said, with unexpected bitterness, and dipped her head to the straw. "Did I say that out loud?" Angus said. "Geez, sorry." "Nothing to be sorry about," Glenda said. She opened a fresh pack of cigarettes and tapped one out. The assassin crouched behind a recycling bin in the alleyway beside the Thai restaurant opposite the bar, his bicycle propped against the wall. He zoomed his gaze to watch the target settle his arse on the stool, his elbow on the counter, and his attention on the floozy. Perfect. The assassin decided this was the moment to seize. He reached for the bike, and with a few practiced twisting motions, had it dismantled. The wheels he laid aside. The frame's reassembly to a new form and function was likewise deft. Glenda fumbled the next lighting up and dropped her lighter. Angus stooped from the stool, more or less by reflex, to pick it up. As he did so, there was a soft thud, and a moment later the loudest scream he'd ever heard. Glenda's legs lashed straight out. Her shin swiped his ear and struck his shoulder, tipping him to the floor. He crashed with the relaxation and anesthesia of the drunk. Glenda fell almost on top of him, all her limbs thrashing, her scream still splitting his ears. Angus raised his head and saw a feathered shaft sticking about 6 inches out of her shoulder. The wound was nothing like severe enough to merit the screams or the spasms. Toxin, then. Modified stonefish, at a guess. The idea wasn't just that you died, though you did, in about a minute. You died in the worst pain it was possible to experience. The barman vaulted the counter, feet hitting the floor just clear of Glenda's head. In his right hand he clutched a short-bladed sharp knife, one he might have used to slice limes. Angus knew exactly what he intended to do with it, and was appalled at the man's reckless courage. "No!" Angus yelled. Too late. The second dart struck the barman straight in the chest. He clutched at it for a moment, then his arms and legs flailed out and he keeled over, screaming even louder than Glenda. Now there were 2 spasming bodies on the floor. The knife skittered under the table. Everything went dark. It was just the end of Earth Hour. A good moment for the shooter to make their escape, or to finish the job. Angus rolled on his back to keep an eye on the window and the doorway, and propelled himself with his feet along the floor, groping for the knife. His hand closed around the black handle. On his belly again, he elbowed his way to Glenda, grabbed her hair, slit her throat, and then slid the blade between cervical vertebrae and kept on cutting. He carried out the decapitation with skills he'd long ago used on deer. She didn't struggle. Her nerves were already at saturation. It wasn't possible to add to this level of pain. Through a gusher of blood, Angus crawled past the barman and did the same for him. He hoped someone had called the police. He hoped that whoever had shot the darts had fled. Keeping low, stooping, he scurried around the back of the counter and reached up cautiously for the ice bucket. He got one on the ground, and saw to his relief that there was another. He retrieved that, too. Holding them in his arms, he slithered on his knees across the bloody floor, back to the front of the bar. and stuffed the severed heads in one by one, jamming them in the ice. Above the screaming from outside and the peal of alarms came the sound of jets. A police VTOL descended on the plaza, downdraft blowing tables away like litter in a breeze. The side opened up, and a cop, visored and armored, leapt out and sprinted across. Angus stood up, blood drenched from head to foot, knife in hand, arms wrapped awkwardly around the 2 ice buckets from which the victim's hair and foreheads grotesquely protruded. The copper halted in the doorway, taking in the scene in about a second. "Well done, mate," he said, reached for the buckets. "Quick thinking. Now let's get these people to the hospital." Monstrous, sticky with blood, Angus crossed the street and stood in the alleyway at a barrier of black and yellow crime scene tape. Backtracking the dart's trajectory had been the work of moments for the second cop out of the VTOL. Even minutes after the attack, the lines in the smart soot had glowed like vapor trails in any enhanced gaze. An investigator in an isolation suit lifted the crossbow and gloved reverent hands. A cat-sized sniffing device stalked about, extending sensors and sampling pads. "What's with the bicycle wheels?" Angus asked, pointing. "Surplus to requirements," the investigator said, standing up, holding the crossbow. She turned it over and around. Collapsible bike, pre-grown tubular wood, synthetic. See, the handlebars form the bow, the crossbar, the stock, the saddle, the shoulder piece, the chain and pedal, the winding mechanism, and the brake cable is the string. The darts were stashed inside one of the pieces. Seen that trick before? Yeah, it's a hunting model. People go hunting on bikes. Oh, I could make the fire a little bit quieter. My apologies. "It's a sport," she laughed. "Offended any hunters lately?" Angus wished he could see her face. He liked her voice. "I offend a lot of people." The investigator's head tilted. "Oh, so you do, Lord Valtos. Or so you do. Lord Valtos, huh?" "Just call me." He remembered what had happened to the last person he'd said that to, then decided not to be superstitious. "Just call me Angus. Angus Cameron." "Whatever." She pulled off her hood and shook out her hair. "Fuck." She looked disgustedly at the cat things. No traces. No surprise. Or, no traces. No surprise. Probably a spray job. You know, plastic skin. Even distorts the smart dust readings and street cam footage. "You can do that?" "Sure. It's expensive." She gave him a look. "I guess you're worth it." Angus shrugged. "I'm rich, but my enemies are richer. So you're in deep shit. Only if they're smarter as well as richer, which I doubt. Water break?" "If you're smart, you'll not walk back to the hotel." He took the hint and the lift. They shrouded him in plastic for it, so the blood wouldn't get on the seats. The reaction caught up with Angus as soon as the hotel room door closed behind him. He rushed to the bathroom and vomited. Shaking, he stripped off. As he emptied his pockets before throwing the clothes in the basket, he found he'd picked up Glenda's lighter and cigarette pack. He put them to one side and showered. Afterwards, he sat in a bathrobe on the balcony, sipping malt on an empty stomach and chain-smoking Glenda's remaining cigarettes. She wouldn't be needing these for a few months. By then, she might not even want them. The hospital would no doubt throw in a fix for her addiction, at least on the physical level, as it regrew her body and repaired her brain. Angus's earlier celebratory cigarillo had left him with a craving, and for the moment, he indulged it. He'd take something to cure it in the morning. When he felt steady enough, he closed his eyes and looked at the news. Found himself a prominent item on it. Spokespersons for various green and Aboriginal coalitions had already disclaimed responsibility and deplored the attempt on his life. At this moment, a sheepish representative of a nuclear waste handling company was in the studio, making a like disavowal. Angus smiled. He didn't think any of these were responsible. They'd have done a better job. But it pleased him to have his major opponents on the back foot. The potential benefit from that almost outweighed the annoyance of finding himself on the news at all. The assassination attempt puzzled him. All the enemies he could think of, the list was long, would have sent a team to kill him if they'd wanted to do something so drastic and potentially counterproductive. It seemed to him possible that the assassin had acted alone. That troubled him. Angus had always held that lone assassins were far more dangerous and prevalent than conspiracies. He reviewed the bios linked to a shallow background for the news items about him. It is just supposed to be anyway. Most of them got the basic facts of his life right. From his childhood early in the century on a wind farm, an experimental green community in the Western Isles, through his academically mediocre but socially brilliant student years. And the networks and connections he'd established soon enabled his deals and ventures in the succession of technological booms that had kept the bubble economy expanding by fits and starts through 7 decades. Carbon capture, synthetic biology, microsatellites, fusion, smart dust, anti-aging, rejuve, augments, and so on, up to his current interest in geoengineering. Always in before the boom, out before the bust. He even ventured into politics, via a questionably bestowed peerage just in time for the packed self-abolition of the Lords, and to emerge with some quite unearned credit for the reform. No relation, hopefully. The descriptions ranged from visionary social entrepreneur and daring venture capitalist to serial confidence trickster and brazen charlatan. I'll take a sip of water. There was truth in all of them. He burned a lot of fortunes in his time, while adding to his own. The list of people who might hold a private grudge against him was longer than the list of his public enemies. Speaking of which, he had a conference to go to in the morning. He stubbed out the last of Glenda's cigarettes and went to bed. The assassin woke at dawn on Manly Beach. He'd slept under a monofilament weave blanket in a hollow where the sand met the scrub. He wore nothing but a watch and swimming trunks. He stood up, stretched, scrunched the blanket into the trunk's pocket, and went for a swim. No one was about. Shoulder deep in the sea, the assassin removed his trunks and watch, clutching them in one hand while rubbing his skin and hair all over with the other. He put them back on when he was sure that every remaining trace of the synthetic skin would be gone. Most of it, almost every scrap, had been dissolved as soon as he'd keyed a sequence on his palm after his failed attempt, just before he'd made his way with a new appearance, his own, and chemical spore through various pre-chosen alleyways and doorways, and then sharp left on the next street up to King's Cross and onto the train to Manly. But you couldn't make too certain. Satisfied at last, he swam back to the still deserted beach and began pacing along it, following a GPS reading that had some time during the night been relayed to his watch. The square meter of sand it led to showed no trace of anything that might be buried there, which was as it should be. The arrangement for payment had been made well in advance. He'd been assured that he'd be paid whether or not he succeeded in killing the target. A kill would be a bonus, but medical technology being what it was, he could hardly be expected to guarantee it. A credible near miss was almost as acceptable. He began to dig with his hands. About 40 centimeters down, his fingertips brushed something hard and metallic. He wasn't to know it was a landmine, and he didn't. One of the nuclear power companies sent an armored limo to pick Angus up after breakfast. A courtesy, the accompanying ping claimed. He sneered at the transparency of the gesture and accepted the ride. At least it shielded him from the barracking of the sizable crowd, for the far larger virtual flash mob in spectral support in front of the Hilton Conference Center. He was pleased to note, just before the limo whirred down the ramp to the underground car park, which gave him a moment of dread, not entirely irrational, that the greatest outrage seemed to have been aroused by the title of the conference, his own suggestion at that, Greening Australia. Angus stepped out of the lift into the main hall, a chandelier the size of a small spacecraft, acres of carpet on which armies of seats besieged a stage, tables of drinks and nibbles along the sides, the smell of coffee and fruit juice, hundreds of delegates milling around. To his embarrassment, his arrival was greeted with a ripple of applause. He waved both arms in front of his face, smiled self-deprecatingly, and turned to the paper plates and the fruit on sticks. Someone had made a beeline for him. "Morning, Valtos." Angus turned, switching his paper coffee cup to the paper plate and sticking out his right hand. Jan Martens, tall and blond. The EU's man on the scene. Biotech and Enviro portfolio. The European Commission and Parliament had publicly deplored greening Australia, though they couldn't do much to stop it. "Hello, Commissioner." They shook. Formalities over, Martens cracked open a grin. "So, how are you, you old villain?" "The hero of the hour, I gather." "Modest as always, Angus. There's already a rumor. The attendant was a setup for the sympathy vote." "Is there indeed?" Angus chuckled. "I wish I'd thought of that. Regretfully, no." Martin's lips compressed. I know. In all seriousness, my sympathy, of course. It must have been a most traumatic experience." "It was," Angus said. "A great deal worse for the victims, mind you." "Indeed." Martins looked grave. "Anything we can do?" "Thanks." The bell chimed for the opening session. "Well?" Martins glanced down at his delegate pack. "Yes. Catch you later, Jan." Angus watched the Belgian out of sight, frowning, then took a seat near the back and close to the aisle. The conference chair, Professor Cheng, strolled on stage and waved her hand. To a roar of applause and some boos, the screen behind her flared into a display of the Greening Australia logo, then morphed to a sequence of pixel-perfect views of the scene. A translucent carbon fiber barrier, tens of kilometers high, hundreds of kilometers long, that would provide Australia with a substitute for its missing mountain range and bring rainfall to the interior. On the one hand, it was modest. It would use no materials not already successfully deployed in the space elevators and would cost far less. Birds would fly through it, almost as easily as butting through a cobweb. On the other hand, it was the most insanely ambitious scheme of geoengineering yet tried, changing the face of the entire continent. Decades ago, Angus had got in early in a project to exploit the stability and aridity of Australia's heart by making it the nuclear waste storage center of the world. The flack from that had been nothing to the outcry over this. As the morning went on, Angus paid little attention to the presentations and debates. He'd heard and seen them all before. His very presence here was enough to influence the discussion, to get smart money sniffing around, bright young minds wondering. Instead, he sat back, closed his eyes, watched market reactions, and worried about a few things. The first was Martin's solicitude. Something in the commissioner's manner hadn't been quite right. A little too close in some ways, a little too distant and impersonal in others. Angus ran analyses in his head of the sweat slick in the handshake, the modulations of the voice, the saccades of his gaze. Here, the augmentation confirmed intuition. The man was very uneasy about something. Perhaps guilty. The next worries were the unsubstantiated unease he'd felt just before his sister's call, and the content of that call. It would have been nice, in a way, to attribute the anxiety to some premonition of the unusual and worrying call, or of the assassination attempt. But Angus was firm in his conviction of one-way causality. Nor could he blame it on some free-floating anxiety. Psychiatric wear was up to date, and his scans mirrored, second by second, an untroubled soul. Had it been something he'd seen in the market, but had grasped the significance of only subconsciously? Had he made the mistake that could be fatal to a traitor, or suppressed an eagle? He rolled back the displays to the previous afternoon and re-examined them. There it was. Hard to spot, but there in the figures, someone big was going long on wheat. A dozen hedge funds had placed multiple 2-year trades on oil, uranium, and military equipment. Biotech was up. A tiny minority of well-placed ears had listened to voices prophesying war. The warm war was turning hot at last. Angus thought about what Catriona had told him about the undocumented, unannounced mitochondrial module in the EU's next genetic upgrade. An immunity to some biological weapon? But if the EU was planning a first strike on Japan, the domain, some other part of the former United States, Brazil, it didn't matter at this point, they would need food security. And food security surely would be enhanced if greening Australia went ahead. So why was Commissioner Martins now on stage repeating the EU's standard line against the scheme? Unless that was merely the line they had taken in public, and they really wanted the conference to endorse the scheme. And what better way to secretly support that than to maneuver its most implacable opponents into the awkward position of having to disown an assassination attempt on its most vociferous proponent. An attempt that, whether it succeeded or failed, would win Angus what Martins had, in a double or triple buff, called the sympathy vote. Sorry, I'll reread that. An attempt that, whether it succeeded or failed, would win Angus what Martins had, in a double or triple bluff, called the sympathy vote. Angus's racing suspicions were interrupted by a ringing in his ear. He flicked his lobe. "A moment, please," he said. He stood up, stepping apologetically past the delegate between him and the aisle, and turned away to face the wall. Yes? It was the investigator who'd spoken to him last night. She was standing on a beach near the edge of a crater in the sand with a bloody mess around it. "We think we may have found your man," she said. "I believe I can say the same," said Angus. "What?" "You'll see. Send a couple of plainclothes into the Hilton Center discreetly. Ask them to ping me when they're in place. I'll take it from there." As he turned back to face across the crowd to the stage, he saw that Martins had sat down, and that Professor Chang was looking along the rows of seats as if searching for someone. Her gaze alighted on him, and she smiled. "Lord Valtos," she said. "I know you're not on the speaker's list, but I see you're on your feet, and I'm sure we'd all be interested to hear what you have to say in response to the Commissioner's so strongly stated points." Angus bowed from the waist. "Thank you, Madam Chair," he said. He cleared his throat, waiting to make sure that his voice was synced to the amps. He zoomed his eyes, fixing on Martins, swept the crowd of turned heads with an out-of-focus gaze and his best smile, then faced the stage. "Thank you," he said. "Well, my response will be brief. I fully agree with every word the esteemed Commissioner has said." A jolt went through Martins like an electric shock. It only lasted a moment, and he'd covered his surprise even before the crowd had registered its own reaction with a hiss of indrawn breath. If Angus hadn't been looking at Martins in close-up, he'd have missed it himself. He returned to his seat and waited for the police to make contact. It didn't take them more than 5 minutes. Just time enough for him to go short on shares in Sin Bio. Very sneaky. Yeah, this one is way more cyberpunk oriented, but it's also, it's like cyberpunk by way of the Star Wars prequel movies, if you know what I mean. But anyway, Ken MacLeod. Ken MacLeod is the multiple award-winning author of many science fiction novels, including the Fall Revolution Quartet, collected in the twin omnibuses Fractions and Divisions, the Engines of Light trilogy, Cosmonaut Keep, Dark Light, and Engine City, and several standalone novels, including Newton's Wake, Learning the World, and the recent The Restoration game. Born on the Scottish Isle of Skye, he lives in Edinburgh. Nice. This is also, like, it's a bit more, I guess gory is the word, in places, just momentarily. But I also like this writing style a bit. I am, though, it seems neutral in an interesting way. Like, all the characters are morally gray. We're following this person who is definitely morally gray. Like, he's definitely morally gray. But I think it's interesting to see characters written like that. That aren't, like, morally gray in the sense that they're doing explicit, like, physical harm or, like, they're murderers or something. He's just politically morally gray and out for his own interests in a way that is sometimes kind of petty and entertaining in that way. I think that's interesting. Might be interesting to check out some of this guy's other work. Curious about it. But those are the 2 stories for today. It was kind of short. Even though the first story was really long, this one is a lot shorter than that one. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed. I am technically off tomorrow, but like I said, I might stream some marathon. All's well. That ends well. Eat well, rest well, stay hydrated. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna finish this bottle of water and have a meal of some kind. Please feel free to check out my socials if you're at all curious. I hang out around here. These are my places. I'll post them up on here too so you can see them. Oh, so much on the screen. Wait, did the stream elements thing not come up? Oh no, that's right there. Okay. Why did it come up before? You know what? I'm not going to ask any more questions. But yes, thank you for hanging out. I do these once every, like, bi-weekly. On the alternate weeks, I read visual novels. So if you're into that kind of stuff, it's often... a lot of them are male love interest centered just because that's kind of like the genre. But there are some I do read that are like queer or LGBT friendly or LGBT explicitly. So they do sometimes have female protagonists, and I think the stories are generally pretty good. The art's good, and they're mostly indie works that I want to help support. A lot of them are currently in Kickstarter, or in progress with Kickstarters. So if you're interested in that stuff, please check that out. I play Marathon, Marathon Classic, which has been a wild time, and Outer Wilds. And I'm gonna hit up the OG Resident Evil games, Tomb Raider, OG Tomb Raider, which is on PlayStation, and Resident Evil Leon Must Die Forever. Those are the things that I've been playing recently. So if you're interested in any of that, please feel free to hang out. Happy to have you around. Hope to see you soon. And thank you.